the difference to traditional consulting. Like we don't go in and do interviews and try to find out, like by like selected conversations what's going on, but we connect to the underlying source systems and we are reconstructing from that. This is how your company actually is running. This is what we can see in your systems, how fast you're answering to the support requests that you're getting. How well on time do you deliver your product to your customer, for example. So like we are reconstructing that in the end from the IT systems, and that's how you get started, right? Like Celonis gives you that transparency on what is going on in the company. And then that's typically the starting point for starting to change how a company is running. Like this could be then like strategic, that you look at, maybe we want to open a new sales channel and we have to design this new process that we want to add to the company. Or it's very operational. We can detect that you, for example, are paying your customers twice sometimes, right? Like you're invoicing duplicates. And we can help you to actually set measurements in place to avoid such inefficiencies in the process, and then operationalize parts of these inefficiencies that we can see in how our company is running.
Okay, so Manuel, it's great to talk to you. Tell us about Celonis.
Yes, of course. Nice to meet you as well, Craig. So if you think about Celonis, what we are doing is we are like the leading vendor for process intelligence platform. So what we are building is an enterprise software that helps our customers in the end to understand and optimize their business processes in a company, and that is used by a huge set of the largest companies in the world to like optimize their businesses, optimize how they serve a customer, optimize how they build their products, optimize on how they purchase things. So that's what we help our customers with in the end at Celonis.
Yeah, and you have a platform that you work that has various tools on it that you use, or do your customers log on to this platform and then you work together, or how does that work?
Typically it's a combination of both. So what we typically do with our customers is we help our customers to get started. So when a customer starts with Celonis, we or a partner of ours, so like we have a very big partner network with the large and also small consulting companies that help our customers to get started with Celonis. And then what we typically see is that a customer starts very focused. So for example, you look at how do you purchase goods in the company, and you look at a certain aspect of that procurement process. And then you start actually sourcing the data for that. You set up Celonis as a system, and you start to implement a first application that's powered by Celonis. And that in the very beginning, we typically do jointly, or a partner of us is doing that jointly together with the customers. And while doing that, a customer typically sets up, like a small center of excellence. Maybe after you've looked at your procurement process and one use case in that procurement process, you go for the second use case. And that's then gradually done more and more by the customers themselves. So they have then a small team of experts that build these applications and these solutions to improve the process. And then they also start to gradually hand it over more and more to the business side. So that actually the ownership of such an app sits in the procurement team itself. So the end user of Celonis as a product is then always a mix of a builder building these solutions and an end user that's actually running the operational process in an interface provided by Celonis, or through an automation that's interfacing with a user that's steered and triggered by Celonis. So that's typically how a customer gets started, and how it then slowly also is maturing over time.
Yeah. And that initial discovery, is that done team to team through conversation, or is there some sort of do you plug into their systems and have a piece of software build kind of a digital pathway that shows where data is flowing and that sort of thing?
Yeah, I think you are hitting an interesting angle, because I think that's maybe the answer to what makes Celonis different to traditional consulting. And that's maybe the answer to, like, what does process mining do in general? Like what is the core technology that we are using? So like if you think about process mining in general, what we are doing at Celonis, we look at a company as a combination of different processes. And a process is, for example, it could be, like you're selling something to your customer, you're invoicing your customer, you are actually responding to a service request that a customer gives you. And if you now think about how are these things done at a company, all of these processes are done in digital systems, or they are supported by a digital system. And so that means when you respond to a product request from your customer, you leave a digital footprint in your systems. And Celonis is a system you can imagine now like a big vacuumer. Like we connect to these systems and we reconstruct what is happening when you are answering to the product request. And that's then the difference to traditional consulting. You know, like we don't go in and do interviews and try to find out, you know, like by, you know, like selected conversations what's going on, but we connect to the underlying source systems, and we are reconstructing from that. This is how your company actually is running. This is what we can see in your systems, how fast you're answering to the support requests that you're getting. How well on time do you deliver your product to your customer, for example? So like we are reconstructing that in the end from the IT systems, and that's to your question, how you get started, right? Like Celonis gives you that transparency on what is going on in the company. And then that's typically the starting point for starting to change how a company is running. You know, like this could be then like strategic, that you look at, maybe we want to open a new sales channel and we have to design this new process that we want to add to the company. Or it's very operational. We can detect that you, for example, are paying your customers twice sometimes, right? Like you're invoicing duplicates. Very natural that you shouldn't do that, right? Like, and we can help you to actually set measurements in place to avoid such inefficiencies in the process, and then operationalize parts of these inefficiencies that we can see in how our company is running.
Yeah. And in that initial discovery, are you using how much artificial intelligence are you using in that, or is that changing? Are you adding more and more?
I would say we are adding more and more. So like it's a combination, right? Like parts of this is very classic data analytics, connect the data, wire it up, be able to analyze it, to query it, to visualize it, to crunch the data. I think that's very classic techniques that we're using. But we're adding more and more AI. One example is understanding and adding unstructured data to these process data sets. So think about, like, let's go back to the customer request, right? Like somebody writes a support ticket and opens that in your at your company, and then typically what you would put in at a portal at, let's pick Amazon or like other e-commerce vendor, right? Like you write a description, what's your problem, and then today you have that description sitting in an IT system, and AI and for example large language models have opened up that you can now start to analyze this free text automatically, and you can actually parse it, enrich the process data with annotated data sets. So you can maybe classify the tickets upfront already. You can maybe add the intent, like a description of what is actually the intent of the ticket that got opened. You know, like helping the support team then to process the request faster, maybe to process it even completely automatically to some extent. And this is just one example. There are tons of these unstructured data sources in a typical process. You could also think about if you purchase something at your supplier, the descriptions of the materials that you're purchasing, they are free text in the end. You could think about on the legal side, contracts that hold information about what are the terms, when do you expect the deliveries of certain goods, what are the penalties that you can expect when you don't deliver a good to your customers. For example, these things are often not stored in databases that you can just access that piece of information right away, but it's in documents. It's stored somewhere hidden in an unstructured data source. And AI has opened up very tremendously to add these kind of informations to the process data and helping, like in the end, AI fusing process intelligence, if you want to.
Yeah. Is it fair to use the term digital twin in what you're building when you extract these business processes and so that you can then look at inefficiencies and ways to optimize them?
I think yes, that is a good term. But I think one thing where I always would hint at is what we typically say is we are creating a digital twin of digital processes. So like we are creating like a specialized version of a digital twin. Why am I saying that? If you just look at digital twins in very broadly, they often also refer to a digital twin, for example, of physical locations, where you then
Yeah.
try to model, like a plant, for example, like the different machines in it and so on. So like that's a little bit a different like direction, where Celonis is not like deeply involved. Celonis is focusing really on this, like how a company is running and building a digital twin of these business processes of a company in the end.
Yeah. I'm so once you've mapped this out and you're then looking at ways to optimize. Does Celonis have a series of products or solutions that you implement, or is every system optimization bespoke?
Again, it's a combination. So the core of Celonis is a platform where developers and citizen developers can build solutions on top of it. But in addition, we also offer like out of the box solutions for repeating problems. So for example, if you go into, if you're a new customer and you start with Celonis and let's say you want to optimize your procurement process, then what we offer is a pretty broad set of applications that you can install on Celonis and that are ready to be used. You then can use our builder tools to customize these solutions to make them fit to the specifics of your company. But we offer a combination. So we have a platform where developers, our partners, but also our customers can develop solutions to certain business problems. But then we have a marketplace and an app store that gives you already applications for common problems that we find in different industries, and different companies and different processes in the end.
Yeah. I mean, there's so much talk right now about optimization and increased productivity with as generative AI starts flowing through the economy. How much of these solutions leverage generative AI?
I I think more like the honest answer is more and more, right? So like if I would be lying if I would say every single solution.
Sure.
But what we see is that more and more of our customers are using Celonis to in the end enable the AI solutions that they're trying to build. I mean maybe what you're hinting at and like what the reference to what I've seen in the last 1-2 years with customers a lot is there is obviously a lot of hype and also hope for AI. How can it help me to run
Yeah.
my company better? And actually, every single customer we talk to has AI budget, and they build AI solutions. Some like more mature, some like more in a pilot phase. And in many cases, Celonis can add like a very valuable and missing piece to those solutions. And that doesn't mean that you build the AI solution completely in Celonis, but you can, right? Like sometimes customers literally build an AI agent or an app that's infused by AI in Celonis. Sometimes we also just expose the process intelligence via APIs, and our customers integrate what Celonis can provide into existing applications. And what we then can add is in the end this process context, right? Like in the end, give the AI this like knowledge on what's going on in the company. Like you can think about like the different statuses of like your processes, but then also the context, right? Like how should it run? What does good look like? How do we measure performance? What do we optimize against? Like this is in the end the type of information you get from Celonis for the AI solutions.
Yeah, I would think, yeah, and so generative AI. There's a lot of pilot programs, as you say, but it hasn't really uh, impacted enterprise in the way that a lot of people believe it will.
Yep.
Traditionally, when you're working with enterprises, uh, at what point do they bring Celonis in? I mean, do they have, it's kind of like in France, the Napoleonic Code. It just, you keep adding, 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 and pretty soon it's this giant monster. Is it like that, companies have been developing and growing, and they end up with this tangle of business processes, and they need someone to come in and comb through it and smooth it out? Uh, And at what point in their
Yeah.
growth companies generally bring you in?
So like I think it's a good analogy that you found there. Like I think reality is the monster exists already in most cases. So if you look at the larger companies like like the Pepsi or BMW or any of the larger enterprises, typically the IT environment and how processes are run is pretty complex. So like and you have always a conflict of interest to some extent, right? Like you have on the one hand you have the enterprise core that you ideally just want to keep running and make it cheaper. And then you have the on the opposite side, you have the need to innovate, to optimize the efficiency, to be able to like very quickly add alternative flavors to a process, for example. And those are a little bit in contrast because do you want to actually touch your legacy enterprise IT and rebuild it completely just to add like a 1% uplift in your margin, but risk that you shut down your entire ERP system landscape? Most likely not. And that's very often where we then what we find at customers and where Celonis can actually kind of like add this like translation layer between the two. And you can like this is a little bit a different flavor of what I was explaining earlier. You can also think about Celonis as this like common language between these enterprise core and then more business focused applications, so that you can almost decouple them. And then you can win time, for example, if you're undergoing like larger system transformations, maybe upgrading from certain like systems to another, but decouple like this like enterprise IT renovation from the business applications that you want to put on top. So for example, you are setting up automation initiatives to like get more agility in how you're running your process. And Celonis then gives you this abstraction layer in between. And maybe back to your question, I said that the monster already exists. Most of our customers are larger companies. So like these are companies where like processes are established usually. So like we have smaller customers and smaller companies using Celonis. We are using us ourselves, so we are not at the size of BMW or Pepsi yet. But the majority of our customers are the large companies, the large businesses with well-established processes where this complexity already exists and where we help them, like to get a step change in how they're operating.
Yeah. And then once you're in a large company, as you said, you work on one discrete business process. And then once you've got that optimized, it's obvious then to move to related business processes and you kind of crawl through the company. Does it end up being an ongoing relationship because the business at the same time is growing and adding business processes?
Yes, 100%. And maybe there are maybe two answers. Like one is I think like processes don't follow system boundaries, for example, or department boundaries, right? Like when you talk about a business processes, how you purchase the goods for your product influences how well you can produce it, and those two influence how well you can serve your customers. How well you actually answer your support requests for the customers will influence how much do you sell. So like there is a lot of interdependencies between these different processes. So what we see with customers, it's a very natural evolution that while you start very focused with one process, that you actually create a connected representation of these different processes, and that you then also cross optimize, right? Like maybe I can optimize some detail on how I purchase things, but I have to actually accept that then my quality goes down in the product I can produce, and things like that, right? Like these are influencing factors, and that's why our customers typically go, like they go broader and broader, but then they constantly have to optimize like these different aspects together. And then I think the other aspect, I think that's what we see with almost all customers that we have. Processes are a living thing, right? Like you have always influences from outside the company. You have always influences from like the purchasing behavior from your customers, for example. There are macroeconomic factors that are changing, right? That so like this, like I think if you look maybe 10, 20 years back before we started, there was sometimes this tendency to say, okay, we just design a process now and then let it run like that. Reality
Yeah.
is a little bit different, right? Like you cannot just design the process and hope that it continues to stay the same, even if you have optimized it with Celonis. So that's why our really successful customers don't see Celonis as a one-time project, but as a continuous system that helps you to run your company in a better way over time.
In today's fast paced world, ensuring your AI systems are not only compliant, but also accurate and robust is key. How can you achieve reliable AI outcomes while managing risks effectively? If you're facing challenges with AI risk management, having a solution that ensures accuracy in robustness is invaluable. Citrusx AI offers cutting edge technology for you to detect and mitigate vulnerabilities, biases, and errors while ensuring accuracy, robustness, and compliance. Their solution is the only one that offers observability capabilities while helping you meet regulatory requirements. Citrusx.ai ensures your AI models are not just performing well, but navigating risk safely. Elevate your AI model management with Citrusx. Visit email.citrusx.ai/ionai to book your free demo today and learn more about how their solution can benefit you. That's email dot citrusx citrusx.ai/ionai ionai all run together EYEONAI to book your free demo today. Yeah. I talk to a lot of people. I mean, this is an AI podcast, so I talk to a lot of people about the effects of generative AI on productivity, and there are these wonderful projections of 20% productivity gains across the board, and now people are talking about agentic workflows, about building AI agents that will handle discrete processes within the business workflow, and then you chain them together so they're talking to each other and really create kind of a base uh, administration layer in a company that relieves a lot of that work from humans and increases productivity as a result. I would think that Celonis is, working really hard to get on top of that, to be an expert on that. I mean, that's so new, but how do you feel about the promise of uh, AI
Yep.
ensembles of agents, in doing handling business processes?
Yeah, I think it's maybe like, I mean, you're right? Like this is one of the aspects where we work very closely with our customers and also like actually bring it into reality, right? Like from like the vision to how can we really run parts of the process with AI agents, and can also go into detail in one or two examples on that. But in general, I think it's on the one hand side, I think um, in the short term, I think it's almost like it's overhyped, like that you can kind of like immediately get all of these efficiency gains like tomorrow or in the next months. I think that's not realistic. Like on the one hand side, I think it's a combination, right? Like the technology is not ready for that, if you're really honest, but also the companies are not ready for that. Like you like just plugging in such a system into a company requires a lot of change, right? Like and these companies have existing like ways of working, and you will very gradually actually go through the maturity curve from where you at the beginning help the existing teams and the existing processes to function better. Then you maybe can replace and augment some of these processes. And then you're going into, okay, now we're going into the direction of what you can call maybe this autonomous enterprise. And that then, like the company or parts of the company start to autonomously like work and interact with each other. And I think in that aspect, it's almost underestimated, right? Like there you could make the claim that maybe 20% is a little bit low. on how much efficiency gains you can really gain if such a vision becomes true.
Yeah. What kind of efficiency gains? I don't know if that's the right way to frame the metric, but do you see generally when you are working on uh, a business process or a series of business processes in a company? Is there sort of a ballpark number that we're going to easily see 10% gain or
I mean, it would be hard for me to say like a concrete percentage number across the board for every customer, as like the processes are very bespoke. I think like I can give you a very concrete example though, right? Like this is like an example from from the automotive industry, where a major manufacturer was experiencing interruptions in the engine production line. And the reason for that is it's called failed material calls. And what that means is the material to build your engine is not available at the production line when it's needed. And using Celonis, going back to what we talked about at the beginning, we can give a company end-to-end visibility on this process. And that made it very easy and just transparent, for example, to identify where are these problems coming from. Like that could be that you have material shortages. It could also be that you have wrong master data in your systems that cause these, like wrong material assignments. It could also be that you have scheduling conflicts. Maybe you have the material, but it's just not at the right point in time.
mm-hmm.
Or you have other reasons that are causing these bottlenecks. And like this example, this customer has actually realized 30% reductions in these, like failed material calls, which is massive, right? Like I think just if you think about it, the worst case scenario is that like a production line is just standing still and not producing the car or the engine. And these are the kinds of efficiency gains we can see from many of our customers.
Yeah. Have you guys experimented at all yet with AI agents? Maybe not directly with customers, but in your development.
No, we have. We also have already a couple of them live with customers even. So and it's like maybe to what I said at the beginning. It's like maturity, like that, like they are becoming more and more complex, and that's what we also see with the customers, right? Like at the beginning, one example we have live with the customer is an agent that's improving the cash conversion cycle and the productivity, where like usually humans review order blocks, like credit blocks on an order. What happens there typically is, for example, you have maybe a note in your system still that there was something wrong with the license agreement with the customer, so you are blocking the order. So what usually would happen is that a human goes in, sees that there is a credit block, tries to investigate where is it coming from. So there's typically a type attached to it, then checks, like on the comments or like any other information in the system. Okay, here was a comment from the licensing team, why they had that block. Then you phone call your colleagues and ask them, is this still valid? Like I see you have set that actually 5 months ago. So like, has there been any progress on this issue? And then you get an answer, yes, no, maybe. And based on that response, you can either release the block, so you can actually continue with the process, or you actually validate that you still don't pay the customer, for example, the supplier, for example. And we have set up an agent for this, like investigation. So the fact that you have this credit block at the point in time when you actually should be paying your customer, that's a process insight that we can very easily calculate and make transparent with our technology. And so that's the point in time when we can hand over a work item to an AI agent. And then we can also, from the process context that we have in our data, like how are typically these issues solved, we can create instructions and prompts for the agent. And so that agent is then actually generating an email. It's reaching out to to a shared inbox of the pricing team in the example I just was making. It's actually like waiting for a response from the pricing team. It's processing these responses, and then it's annotating the order block, and it's recommending to the team that's responsible for the payments, can you remove it or can you not remove it? And they then have like a prioritized inbox, so to say, that they can work through. And the next step very obviously is, okay, now let's automate that end to end, right? Like why have a human in the loop? But that's then the part of the maturity curve that you like from an agent that's helping and taking away some of the manual work you have to do to fully automating and fully running a part of your process. And that's one example, right? Like we've been working pretty closely with many of our customers in the last year to build similar use cases in Celonis.
And that's fascinating. Is that agent built in house by Celonis? Do you adapt an off the shelf agent, because there are now marketplaces of agents?
Yeah. So in general, it's a combination. So this concrete example is built in Celonis. So we in Celonis we offer as part of our portfolio for improving processes. We offer like capabilities to build agents yourself, but we also integrate with the big vendors out there, right? Like so, we have customers where we integrate with Microsoft Copilot Studio, for example, as one of the big ones. We have IBM Watson X is another one. Amazon Bedrock, like the typically big players, you can integrate with Celonis, and it's more like a customer specific setup, right? Some customers just have like certain tools already established in their enterprise IT, and then we usually integrate with those to actually just facilitate building these agents. But many of our customers don't have an established tool yet, so we also offer parts of this as the Celonis portfolio to build it in Celonis itself.
Yeah, I mean, it's an exciting time in this world. How do you feel about the development of? I mean, as you said, it's things get overhyped, but on the other hand, you're at the sharp end of the spear. You're seeing it integrated into enterprises. Uh, just talk about how you see agentic workflows and generative AI working into business processes. Do you think it's something that's going to take 10 years? Do you think it's something that's going to 2 years from now, there are going to be networks of agents handling a lot of the grunt work in these organizations?
I think maybe as a disclaimer before that, I think the honest answer is there are some things we know and many things we don't know at the moment, right? So like also like if you just look how fast things are moving still, right? Like even the jumps that the foundational models are making,
Yeah.
I think it's literally very hard to predict exactly when this will arrive, especially as into an enterprise cosmos, right? Like enterprises are traditionally like a little bit behind to what you can see on the consumer side. Also very like understandably because it can be a lot more critical if you run your like your way how you produce certain pharmaceuticals on based on agentic workflows compared to I just asked ChatGPT about drafting a letter to my uncle for me. So like very different severity
Yeah.
levels. So like just that as a disclaimer. But I think it will like it won't take 10 years until we see that. But I think there are also levels to that. So I think
Yeah.
there will be the need to like to to be very specific. What do you hand over to an AI? How much control do you need to put in place? And how do I actually govern it? What it's doing. So I don't believe that there is one fits all solution to like all of the business processes and how companies are running in general. So like maybe some of your processes you can like run very autonomously, and like the way how the problem is solved is generated on the fly, and I think you can see first elements of that working in reality now. But I think there's also the other side of the spectrum, maybe going back to like the pharmaceuticals and so on, where you want to have very tight control on what's actually going on, where then AI is more like is maybe embedded in more classical workflows where you have tight control over control flows, what's allowed, what's not allowed, what are the guarantees I want to give, and where I'm more flexible for adjustments. And I think this is like a hybrid world for like an extended period of time that you will see there.
Yeah. In your work, can you talk a little bit about? I was looking at some of your material, process intelligence graph. What is that concept? Is that the visualization or the initial discovery that you were talking about when you plug into a system? Uh, and yeah.
Yeah, this is in the end the core data set that we work with. So maybe I give you a little bit of context why, like where this is coming from. Like process mining, what we are doing, like this transparency and calculating the as is process, how it's running in a company. At the beginning, and also what Celonis did a couple of years ago, is you had traditionally looked at one single process. So you
Mm-hmm.
actually look, for example, at like maybe the delivery to your customer. So you picked the deliveries and you actually looked at that single process. How do we deliver goods to the customer, for example? And then when you wanted to analyze, in addition to that, okay, how are we producing our products? You picked the production items, and you looked at the process for the production items. So you could then combine that by looking at them side by side, but process mining in its core was looking at individual processes. With the process intelligence graph, what we started to do is combining these. So combining all of the processes in one data set. So and what we ultimately do is we look at the digital documents, like the objects in a company. So that's maybe the invoice, that's maybe the production line item, it might be a customer service request ticket. Those are the digital documents that we find in the source systems. And then the second data point we reconstruct from the systems, it's what's happening to these documents, what's happening to these objects. So you open an order, you cancel an order, you change a price on an order, you book an invoice, you send out a delivery. These are events. That this is what's going on. And then we like one event has a connection to multiple objects. So for example, when you actually like think about Amazon, right? Like your basket and you click on checkout. When you click checkout, you have like an invoice that's created and sent to you as a customer. At the same time, in the background, the packaging is starting, right? Like the Amazon employees, they start to put stuff into a package and then like hand it over to delivery and so on, right? Like so, this one event is touching multiple things in the background, and that creates a graph. So like that creates a graph of things that are happening that are touching multiple things in a company. And that allows us to stitch together the different processes in the end. So we can then see, how does my purchasing influence my production? How does my production influence my customer satisfaction and how I deliver to my customers, and so on. So, and that's what you asked it earlier. This is what we call the digital twin of the processes of a company.
I see. Yeah.
And then like maybe one more, like this is the process data. And then we add one more aspect to the process intelligence graph, which is how should actually things run? And we call that business context. So we also put into the system, how do we measure performance? That can be as simple as a KPI. But we also put into the system target process behavior. So like maybe certain flows that are expected and how the process got designed. Or statement of works, like descriptions of how a certain step should be executed by the teams or by the systems. So that's what is called the process intelligence graph.
Yeah. Uh, this a couple of questions. One, I imagine data privacy is something you have to build into these systems if you're moving uh, data around. How big of a challenge is that, or do generally the protocols within a company take care of that? Because you're not working with external facing systems necessarily. You're working with internal processes.
Ultimately, it's shared responsibility, but of course, it's also like a big priority for our teams. So, like that means, right? Like the Celonis system that you operate as a company is isolated from all of the other Celonis customers. Our teams take care of that. Like it's there are no vulnerabilities or like sensitive data cannot leak and so on. So like that's a big focus of our infrastructure and security teams. But in the end, like you say, it's like it's a combination, right? Like we integrate with the customer's data, so a part of this is also handled by by the IT systems that we find in place that we integrate with.
Yeah. And for enterprises that have not yet gone through this process, everyone's looking at how they can integrate Gen AI, and now everyone's looking at how they can integrate AI agents or even networks of agents. How should a company that really doesn't know where to start, how would you advise them to start?
I mean, I think it's my biggest advice would be focused and nimble, to be honest, right? Like so I think there like one mistake that like you can see sometimes is that you try to boil the ocean with AI, right? Like solve everything at once. And I think like what we can see is where these projects get real traction, like also the examples I mentioned earlier, is when you can narrow down the problem. And when you can effectively narrow down the problem to actually build a pragmatic solution that also works, that you can deliver, that you can put in production, and then you can grow around it. So like maybe it's only giving you 1% of the initial value you wanted to realize, but it's delivering value. And then you can start to add on top of it and actually build a system and build a, like a program that allows you to have this agility and then like, like incrementally expand from there.
Are there systems? Does Celonis have a system that companies can start mapping their processes before they engage a company to try and figure out on their own where they should be focusing?
I mean, yes, that's built into our system. So what we typically do with a customer before we go full steam ahead is like a value assessment, and you do that supported by our system. So we then can like, for example, extract only a part of the process data to create, like some like estimates on how much value do we expect from certain improvements. What are the improvements we would recommend to start with? And that's a combination of like the technology, right? Like our ability to maybe sample some data and only get a part of the data out before we go into a full project. But also, I mean, Celonis is existing for since 2011 already. So like it's also institutional knowledge that we have like built, curated, and put into our system with apps and like these like just the knowledge what we have seen in other companies and across the industries.
Is there something I haven't touched on that you think people should hear?
I mean, I think we covered many of the things. We have a big conference coming up where we will talk a lot more in detail and also more concretely, showing some real customers examples. So if anybody got excited about the customer examples, the technology in general, like there's a big wave of sessions, material, and demonstrations coming that make that even more tangible that everyone can take a look at.
Yeah, when and where is that?
So the conference is starting next week. So it's at October 22nd until October 24th in Munich. So in our Europe headquarter here, we will bring together our customers and our partners to actually show the latest developments.
Yeah. And in terms of latest developments, that's something I didn't ask you. You did have a series of, or at least a big announcement within the last month or so. What was that?
So like one of the like big announcement is especially around Celonis enabling AI agents. So that as a part of our portfolio, we now like enable Celonis agent building, so copilots and autonomous agents in Celonis, but also like a series of integrations with external partners. So that can be external agents built by technology partners from us, but also agent platforms like a Microsoft Copilot Studio, AWS Bedrock, watsonx, and so on. So that's one of the big announcements that we have made and that we are pushing at the moment.